hope that you can hear me well. I'm sorry about the noise, but currently I'm at the bus station in Amman. And please let me know in the chat if you can hear me clearly. Welcome everyone. Please feel free to share the link to this live conversation with your peers, with your friends. You can copy the link and send it in a private message to your friends. I'm going to invite the WHO to join the chat. Thank you to everyone joining. My name is Khasawneh. I'm a global road safety advocate. I work as an advocacy and campaigns manager at Yours Youth for Road Safety. And I'm very excited to have a conversation with a superstar on road safety today from the World Health Organization. But please, before we get started, let us know in the chat where are you from and what you know about rethinking mobility. Today we are very excited to kickstart the UN Road Safety Week with the theme of rethinking mobility, and we're going to have an insightful conversation with Dr. Etienne Krug about the active modes of travel and how it contributes to having a better health and a better well-being for young people. As you know, when we choose to cycle, to walk, or even skateboard to do our daily errands instead of taking the cars, we are not only doing something good for the planet, but we are also benefiting our own mental health and our own well-being. Because using active modes of travel benefits our muscles, our heart health, and also gives us a boost in the mood and the energy. And today we're going to learn more about this with Dr. Etienne Krug. And many of our viewers today, maybe they don't know that road crashes are a global health issue. It's the #1 killer of young people worldwide. It's a major concern for everyday mobility in low and middle income countries. And by shifting into more active and more sustainable modes of transport, we are also preventing injury and saving lives. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Etienne Krug, who is leading the WHO's effort in preventing injury, violence, and disability. And he's the superstar in road safety and one of the main supporters for young people. Thank you so much for joining, Etienne.
I'm really happy to be there, Sana.
Thank you so much. When we rethink mobility, Dr. Etienne, we are talking about shifting our mindset, how we perceive transportation. We are talking about changing the way that transportation systems are designed. And today we are marking the 7th UN Global Road Safety Week, and we would like to promote more active modes of travel. Maybe you can tell us about how that affects our mental health and our well-being as young people, and how does that also contribute to impacting other challenges like reducing the carbon footprint and also like enhancing the participation, for example, of young people and women in the daily job market, because they will have more than multiple alternatives to mobility.
That's right, Sana. If you think about it, we have invented a transportation system that we use every day and which has killed more than 50 million people since we invented it. We use cars for most of what we do, to go to work, to go to school, to go shopping, to go on holidays. More than 50 million people have died since we invented that car. I'm sure that retrospectively, if we would have said, we want to use this new transportation mode, it's just going to kill 50 million people, we would never have decided to use it. It's high time to do something about it. Our transportation is the leading killer of young people, not only in rich, but also in poor countries. And so what we want to achieve with this new global UN Road Safety Week is put the focus on the need to move away from a system that has been developed for cars to a system that is developed for people. more walking, more cycling, more public transportation. But of course, before we do that, it has to be
exactly,
made
because
safe.
we cannot trade mobility for safety. Safety always has to come first. Maybe Etienne, you can tell us about
That's
how
right.
do you usually commute to your office at the WHO? I can see that now you are in the bicycle station.
I'm actually just next to my bike here. I don't know if you can see it, but yes, I love to come by bike. I have an electric bike because it's a 45-minute bike ride. But for me, it's not only a way to commute, which, by the way, takes me 45 minutes by bike and 40 minutes by car. So, because of all the traffic jams and the delays. So it's not only physical activity, it's also clearing my head. When I come out of work and I bike for 40 minutes through the vineyards, through the fields and the forest, I come home and I feel on
This is
holiday.
amazing. Where in Jordan we do not have infrastructure that cater well to active modes of travel. But today, right now, I'm in the bus station of the BRT in North Amman in Swaleh. And I can see that many students, many women, many people from different age groups, different backgrounds, using public transportation, using buses instead of driving. And this is promising. The government is doing major investments to enhance the public transportation and to provide alternatives for people. And I hope that in the future we can see more projects and more investments in collaboration with the private sector and other agents in the society in order to have alternatives for people. But maybe a lot of young people watching us today are excited about doing initiatives on active travel. Maybe they are advocates for rethinking mobility, but I'm sure that they have major safety concerns. So, in your opinion, how can we respond to these concerns? Because as you know, most of the fatalities and serious injuries caused by road crashes are affecting pedestrians and cyclists and vulnerable road users. So how do we respond to that?
You're right, Sana. I have such high hope in young people. The new generation wants to move away from a car-based system. My own daughter, she's 28 now. She does not want to get a driver's license. She wants to do things with public transport. While when I was her age, my only dream was to get a driver's license as soon as possible. So things are changing, and it's necessary. But as you say, before we push people on bicycles and walking and in public transport, we have to make sure that it is safe. And that's where the policymakers comes in. It is high time for policymakers to make sure what we call the vulnerable road users, those who are outside the cars, are protected. What does that mean? That means better infrastructure, bicycle lanes, pedestrians, walking places, places where children can play on the side of the road that are safe, as well as public transport that is of good quality, but where the drivers are not pushed, for example, to drive 12, 13, 14 hours a day just because profit can be made. So there's a whole shift that is needed to make these alternative and much healthier modes of transport safe. And I think young people have a big role in there in demanding that. You want to have transportation that's more sustainable, but we need to allow you to do that by making it safe.
Yes, absolutely. And I can say, as a young advocate from the MENA region and as a global advocate for road safety with a special focus on women's empowerment, I would also say that when we talk about rethinking mobility and sustainable mobility, we need to make sure that it's also accessible for different genders and for different age groups. Women especially and young girls have special needs that traditional transportation systems are not accommodating and are not responding to. So it's very important that when we create safe spaces and sustainable spaces for mobility, they are also inclusive and create a safe space for people regardless of their gender, regardless of their background. And for example, in my region, we have a weak participation of women in the economic sector because they have many challenges in using transportation. And if we look also at regions like Africa, we will see that many schools have low attendance rates by young people because they cannot afford transportation, or the traditional transportation is not safe. So merely going to school or commuting to school is a threat to their safety. And we need to make sure that sustainable modes of travel respond to that and accommodates the needs of all the young people and the different age groups of people in our community. Maybe Etienne, you can tell us something inspiring, message to the young advocates and the viewers that are watching us today. I know that we have many people joining from the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety, and they would love to hear an inspiring message from you. How we as young people can claim our space and lead change in rethinking mobility.
Yeah, thank you, Sana. Let me first agree on what you just said. It is so important that our transportation system is inclusive. You talked about the safety of women, and as a father of 3 girls, I can, of course, only agree. But also I'm thinking about people with disabilities, for example, who also need to be able to access it and have the right to safety just as anybody else. So yes, in terms of safety, there's much more we can do. And as I said, I have high hopes with the new generation. And I'm so encouraged with what I have seen. In 2007, WHO organized the first World Youth Assembly for Road Safety. And we had hundreds of young people coming from all over the world. Since then, this movement has sparked many spin-off events, spin-off activities, and spin-off networks at the regional and national level. We see young people take action. We see young people write to their policymakers, organize events, come together as a community to demand more safety. And I think that is going to make a huge difference. So my message to young people today is please continue, and not only continue, intensify your efforts. This global UN Road Safety Week that WHO and the international community is organizing is exactly meant for that, is to give you a platform to make noise, to be demanding, to be in your policymakers' face, to make sure we don't sit here for another 50 years seeing people die on the roads, but that we take the action needed so that people can walk, cycle, and use public transport, which is the only way forward.
Amazing. This is very inspiring. And I think young people can play a huge role in bridging the gap between the decision makers and people who are taking the decisions and responsible for the way the transportation systems are working. And they can advocate to having safer streets and more inclusive mobility systems that accommodates our own needs and also the needs of the planet. And I would say that the young generation is more aware about how traditional transportation systems are affecting the planet and how they are contributing to global challenges when it comes to the climate. And there is a huge importance that we need to make a shift in transportation. But I would say maybe this is something that young people cannot do alone. So we need to create a collaboration. We need to create meaningful mechanisms where young people can be involved in decision-making spaces. Maybe Etienne, you can tell us about leading examples of countries who have succeeded in creating models of sustainable mobility. And you can tell us about the role that young people played in this, so the young audience can be inspired.
You know, you're absolutely right. Young people are coming together to act on climate change. One component of that is make sure that we can walk and cycle and use public transportation safely. This will reduce car-based transportation and therefore will reduce emissions, which contribute to global warming. So we definitely have to integrate these two agendas. But as you say, many countries are taking action. We have countries that have, implemented 30-kilometer-per-hour speed limit. Wales has done it. Spain has done it. Many cities are doing, particularly around schools or where traffic mixes. These speed limits contribute greatly to improve safety. Others, like Luxembourg, have made public transport totally free for people living in Luxembourg as well as for visitors. Of course, that is increasing the use of that public transport and contributing to safety and reduced emissions again. Countries like or cities like Bogota, for example, or Fortaleza have put in place rapid bus transportation systems, which are much more efficient than sitting in a car in traffic jams and reduce pollution. Pontevedra, a city in Spain, has taken the biggest and boldest step, which is ban all cars from the center of the city. And with that, of course, the city is safer, but also much more enjoyable. And in fact, while businesses were worried about that move, they have benefited from it because more people come to the center of town and they say our city center is now a giant shopping mall and business has boomed. So there are many, many examples of actions that are being taken, and young people are often either part or sometimes even at the center of it by pushing their policymakers to take action. So
yes,
please keep
absolutely.
doing that.
I can see a comment from Shalini. She's saying we need to plant more trees and create more green spaces in order to encourage people to cycle and work more, especially for short distances. I think this is very important. Thank you so much for sharing. And a lot of people are leaving so many comments about climate change and how active mobility can create a huge impact, a positive impact on addressing climate change challenges. Maybe now we can talk a little bit about mental health. As you know, when people are driving, when they are stuck in congestions, when they are waiting for late trains, late buses, they are under so much stress. And being always exposed to the pollution, to noise pollution, air pollution, is also affecting the well-being of young people and also other age groups in the community. When we read about how we can improve our own mental health, we are always encouraged to be more physically active and to walk more, cycle more, and to breathe fresh air. So basically, rethinking mobility plays a huge role in boosting the mental health of young people. From the health perspective, what would you tell us about this, Etienne, and how can we encourage young people to shift their mindset and to care about their own mental health needs while also taking better and healthier and more sustainable modes of travel?
You know, I can tell you an anecdote. I used to, like 15 years ago, there was a colleague and friend in my village who was biking to work, and I thought, this is impossible. I mean, when I do it by car, it takes me 30, 40 minutes. How can he do it? I can never do that, etc. And one day I decided to try, and I never stopped because I felt much better bicycling through the traffic jams than sitting in a car getting frustrated. So you're right. I mean, moving from passive transportation to active transportation is good for physical health, but it is also good for our mental health. It is really important for us to get out, to walk, to bicycle, and it helps us clear our mind. It helps us enjoy much better our surroundings, be part of nature, etc., etc. The only condition is, before you do that, make sure it's safe. If there are no bicycle lanes, if there are no places to walk safely, if you don't wear your helmet, if there are no appropriate speed limits or drink driving legislation and enforcement, then it can be very risky. The same for public transport. It's the way forward, but in some countries, public transport remains overcharged. The drivers drive too fast. They drive many long hours because they're obliged to by the company, and then it becomes unsafe and stressful, frankly. So these things go hand in hand. The safety component needs to go together with the push to the more active mode of transport. But if we do it, everybody wins. We win, society wins, our health wins, and of course our planet is much better.
So basically, when we make this decision to walk or cycle, we are not only like reducing the negative impact on the planet, we are also having better health heart, we are strengthening our muscles, we are boosting our own energy. So it's definitely a win-win situation. And I can see a lot of positive comments. A lot of people are saying that spaces where we can walk and cycle will definitely improve our mental health. And Sandeep is saying, I think we need to take more initiative or scheme regarding sustainability and make sure about proper implementation This is very important. Thank you so much for sharing. If you have any questions for Etienne, please drop them in the chat. In the meantime, Etienne, now we are kicking off basically the UN Global Road Safety Week with Rethinking Mobility. What would be the next steps? So after this campaign, after raising the awareness of active modes of travel among young people, among our communities, what would be the next step if we want to push our governments to rethink mobility and to accommodate sustainable modes of travel in the policy making processes? What would be next?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that, Sana. I'm so happy because, yes, this is one global United Nations Road Safety Week. And of course, in 1 week, we're not going to change the world. We plant some seeds, but we need to follow up and keep up the pressure. We need to also remember that this UN Road Safety Week happens in the context of a decade of action, which all governments have agreed to. They have decided that by 2030, the deaths on the world's road should reduce by 50%. And of course, this is not just going to happen by a magical wand. This is going to happen because deliberate action has been put in place. And usually policymakers need some pushing. They need some encouragement. They need some guidance sometimes. And so young people keeping up the pressure, keeping up the encouragement, but also leading by example is going to be very important for the months and years ahead. We all want to see this 50% reduction in road deaths by 2030. It's not going to happen without young people. On one hand, by them demanding action because they are suffering the most from the lack of road safety, but also by them adopting safe behaviors and leading by example. We all
yes, absolutely. And young people have been recognized for the first time ever in the last action plan for the second decade of action for road safety as one of the main agents. So this is definitely a call to all young people watching us today to be inspired and to take the initiative and work in collaboration with their governments to make this shift. I see one comment from Musab. He's saying smart cities and 15-minute cities initiatives should be implemented to promote active mobility, and electric cars are not the way forward, but active mobility is. What would be your take on this, Etienne?
I can only agree. It's one of these good examples that we have to talk about, which is these 15-minute cities. I don't know if everybody knows what it is, but basically it's conceiving the city so that almost all trips taken will be shorter than 15 minutes and can be done ideally walking or cycling or in public transport. That means that, you need to think of how far people live from their workplace, from the school, from the store, and from the main places they have to go to. So it's a bit reconceptualizing our cities, which is definitely possible for newer cities, a little bit harder for older cities, but very possible. Paris is one of those 15-minute cities, which of course is centuries old. So it is, I think, the way forward. But again, we all have a role in demanding it and also in applying
absolutely. I think we need a strong political will. We need strong commitment from governments, from policymakers, in order to address this and to make sure that there is a positive shift and a will to change the traditional transportation systems and have other alternatives and be inspired by the leading examples of other cities. But let's talk about the existing state of cities right now, especially in low and middle income countries. Like the existing road networks do not accommodate the active travel modes. So this can be a main obstacle, especially for countries that do not have investments to invest in active travel modes. How can we convince, as young people, as young advocates for road safety and sustainability, how can we push for more investments in active travel?
Well, we've seen, particularly during COVID, cities have taken the opportunity to build more bike lanes, to build safer space, to reduce the presence of cars in their centers. And it worked. It has really made a difference. So it is possible, even in older existing set cities. We've seen in New York how, since Mike Bloomberg, so many bicycle lanes have been created. We've seen Paris, which we just mentioned, London. A number of cities are taking action, even the oldest cities of the world. Milan, I think, is creating hundreds of kilometers of bicycle path, among the many other examples. So it is possible. It's a question of political will at the top level of the city.
And we can always bring the evidence. We can always bring the experiences of countries who did it, and we can always accommodate these changes based on the existing state that we have. We have a comment from Musa Murtaza. He's saying we need to promote active mobilization in countries that are contributing in global gas emissions. Well, unfortunately, everywhere in the world is affected by climate change, not only the polluting countries. So if we are talking about rethinking mobility, we need to do it on a global level, not only in the polluting countries. We also have other questions. Yes, we have a question from Road Safety Ninjas, Road Smart Ninjas. How best can governments engage young people to meaningfully contribute to cities and towns, municipalities that do not have the existing road networks for active mobility?
That's another great question. It is so important to listen to young people who experience travel along the road on their bicycles, who need to play, and who often are ignored in terms of the voices they can bring and the experience they have. So if we are to redesign our cities, it is very important to involve, at least consult groups of young people, go to schools, go to NGOs, and ask them their opinion on what needs to change, on what their concerns are, on what their worries are when they go to school, when they play on the side of the street, etc., etc. It is something that is very possible, that we have seen happen now in more and more countries, and that should become institutionalized. Young people should be part of the solution in their ideas, in their worries, and in bringing up solutions to the problem.
Yes, absolutely. I can see so many people joining. Thank you so much. Some people are...
And by the way, Sana, sorry to come back, Sana. Another way for young people to be really involved is to run for positions on the city council, on the village council, or even at national level. We've seen prime ministers who are in their 30s now in several countries, and you can be even younger on the city council. So, I would run for officers and use those positions.
Yes, absolutely. I think in most countries, decision makers are not young people. They do not belong to the age group that identifies as youth. And for this reason, they do not know what young people want. They do not know what young people need. So we cannot just expect our governments to make this transformation for us. We need to advocate for having a seat at the table and sharing our needs and voice our needs in the policy-making spaces. Absolutely. Maybe we can take last question. Someone is asking, active modes of travel do not accommodate older age groups. How would you respond to this, Etienne?
Well, I don't know. I'm in my early 60s. I bike, so I would say it's not. It is possible. We older people can and should be active, and they often have more time also, so are less in a rush. So I would say older people can use public transport very well, can walk, can bicycle. So I don't see that as an obstacle at all. And in many countries, public transport is even made free for older people. So I would encourage them to do the same and participate in active modes of transport. Of course, at the oldest ages, sometimes disability occurs, etc. So we need to make sure that our transportation systems are inclusive and allow for even older people with disabilities too.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I think that driving has promoted for decades as being more convenient, as being easier, more accessible. But we have seen that this is not the truth. So we need to make a shift in our mindset as youth, as everyone basically in society, and to make this decision that is better for our own mental health, for our own well-being, and it's also better for the planet. So it's very important that we promote active modes of travel among different age groups. I think we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much, Etienne, for your time and for your continued commitment to support young people. I would like to invite all the young viewers to join our global movement at the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety by going to claimingourspace.org. We have released a policy brief on rethinking mobility that talks about how road safety is interlinked with SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities. And you can always email us at coalition@youthforroadsafety.org with your stories. We would love to hear from you. We would love that our members are inspired by the initiatives you are taking at grassroots level. So let's all embrace active travel. Let's make the change that we want to see. And let's start promoting rethinking mobility. Thank you, Etienne, for joining. And thank you to everyone that joined the chat today.